Nomi, I need to tell you something. I don't love you anymore. I want a divorce.
Naomi's fork clattered against her plate as Ji-hoon reached across the table and placed his hand over hers. For a moment, her heart soared. 3 years of marriage, and he still gave her butterflies. The candlelight flickered between them in the expensive Seoul restaurant, casting shadows across his impossibly handsome face. She'd worn his favorite dress, the ice blue one that hugged her curves just right. Their 3rd anniversary. She'd been planning this night for weeks. Ji-hoon, she said, her smile wide and hopeful. I can't believe it's been 3 years already. Remember our wedding day? When you— Naomi, I need to tell you something. His tone made her stop mid-sentence. His hand wasn't warm on hers. It was cold. Distant. She looked into his eyes and found nothing there. No warmth. No love. Just emptiness. What is it? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't love you anymore. The words came out flat, emotionless. I want a divorce. The restaurant continued around them. Laughter from nearby tables, the clink of wine glasses, a waiter walking past with a tray. But Naomi heard nothing except the rush of blood in her ears. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. What? She finally managed. I don't love you, he repeated, pulling his hand away. I haven't for a while now. This marriage was a mistake. A mistake? Her voice cracked. Ji-hoon, what are you talking about? We're happy. You're happy, Naomi. I'm not. He picked up his wine glass, taking a slow sip as if he'd just commented on the weather. My lawyer will contact you next week. I'll make sure you're taken care of financially. Financially? She felt tears burning behind her eyes but refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of him. I don't care about money, Ji-hoon. I care about us. About our marriage. Talk to me. What happened? What did I do wrong? You didn't do anything wrong. He set down his glass. I just don't feel it anymore. Whatever I felt for you is gone. Gone? She was repeating his words like a broken record, unable to process what was happening. People don't just stop loving each other, Ji-hoon. Not like this. Not without reason. Is there someone else? No. He shook his head. There's no one else. I just don't want this anymore. Naomi felt like she was drowning. 3 years. 3 years of building a life together. 3 years of loving him with everything she had. And he was throwing it away over dinner like he was canceling a subscription. So that's it? Her hands trembled in her lap. You're just done? We don't even try counseling or— I don't want to try, Naomi. His voice was final. I want out. The drive back to their penthouse apartment was silent. Naomi stared out the window at Seoul's glittering skyline, wondering how the city could look so beautiful when her world was ending. When they got home, Ji-hoon went straight to the guest bedroom. She heard the lock click. That was 4 years ago. But even now, Naomi could still feel the ghost of that pain. She could still taste the salt of the tears she'd cried alone in their bed that night, clutching his pillow, breathing in his cologne, begging God to make it not real. But God hadn't answered that prayer. What followed was worse than the divorce itself. It was the waiting. Naomi stayed in Seoul. She told herself it was because of the apartment lease, because of her job, because moving back to New York would be admitting defeat. But the truth was simpler and more pathetic than she wanted to admit. She was waiting for him to come back. Waiting for him to realize he'd made a mistake. Waiting for him to knock on the door and tell her he was sorry. That he loved her. That they could fix this. He never came. The divorce papers arrived via courier. She signed them with shaking hands, her vision blurred by tears. But still, she stayed. Still, she waited. Because she had a secret that grew bigger every day, literally. She was pregnant. Naomi had found out 2 weeks after Ji-hoon left. She'd been feeling nauseous, exhausted. At first, she thought it was the stress of the divorce, But when she missed her period, she knew. The pregnancy test confirmed it. 2 pink lines that changed everything. She'd stared at that test for hours, her mind racing. Should she tell him? Would it change his mind? Would he come back if he knew? Part of her wanted to call him immediately, to text him, to show up at his office and force him to look at the test, to see what they'd created together. But her pride stopped her. He'd said he didn't love her. He'd said their marriage was a mistake. Did she really want to trap him with a baby? Did she want him to come back out of obligation rather than love? So she decided to wait. Just a little longer. Just until he realized what he'd lost. Then she'd tell him about the baby and they'd be a family. They'd figure it out together. She waited 1 month, then 2, then 3. Her belly began to swell beneath her loose clothes. She went to doctor's appointments alone, listening to the heartbeat of their child while staring at the empty chair beside her where he should have been sitting. "It's a girl," the doctor told her during the ultrasound at 20 weeks. Naomi watched the grainy image on the screen, saw the tiny fingers and toes, the flutter of a heartbeat, and felt love so fierce it physically hurt. A daughter. She was having a daughter. "Do you want to know if the father will be involved?" the doctor asked gently, probably noticing Naomi always came alone. "He will be," Naomi said, her hand on her rounded belly. "He just doesn't know yet." But as the months crawled by, doubt crept in. She'd see his car sometimes, driving through the city. Once she'd been driving past his favorite cafe and saw him through the window. He was laughing at something on his phone. Laughing. While she was carrying his child, barely holding herself together, he was laughing. She almost went in. Almost walked up to his table and told him everything, but fear paralyzed her. What if he didn't care? What if he looked at her pregnant belly with disgust instead of joy? What if he'd meant what he said about their marriage being a mistake? So she turned around and went home, her daughter kicking against her ribs as if urging her to be brave. But Naomi wasn't brave. Not then. She was terrified and heartbroken and clinging to a fantasy that Ji-hoon would come back on his own. 8 months pregnant, alone in their apartment, she scrolled through her phone out of habit. That's when she saw it. An entertainment news article with photos that made her stomach drop. Tech mogul Ji-hoon Park spotted with actress Lee Min-ji at exclusive restaurant. The two were seen getting cozy, sparking romance rumors. The photos showed everything. Ji-hoon smiling, genuinely smiling in a way he hadn't smiled at her in months before the divorce. His hand on the actress's arm, her laughing at something he said. They looked happy. They looked like a couple. Naomi stared at those photos until her vision blurred. He'd moved on. While she'd been waiting, hoping, carrying his child he'd been dating, he'd been taking another woman to restaurants, making her laugh, touching her arm the way he used to touch Naomi's. He wasn't coming back. He never was. Something broke in her that night. Not her heart, because that had already been shattered. Something deeper. Something fundamental. Her hope died, and in its place, something harder grew. Anger. Determination. A cold fury that burned through her grief and crystallized into resolve. She deleted his number from her phone, blocked him on every platform, packed up everything that reminded her of him, and threw it away. She wasn't going to wait anymore. She wasn't going to hope anymore. 3 weeks later, her water broke. She took a taxi to the hospital alone, breathing through contractions, her hand pressed against her belly. No one held her hand during labor. No one told her she was doing great. The nurses were kind but detached, doing their jobs while Naomi pushed and screamed and brought a whole human being into the world by herself. When they placed her daughter in her arms, Naomi looked down at the tiny, perfect face and started crying. Not sad tears this time. Something else. Something bigger. "What's her name?" the nurse asked, pen poised over the birth certificate. Naomi looked at her daughter, at the beautiful life she'd created, and realized something profound. She'd spent a year waiting for a man who didn't love her, a year hoping for someone who'd moved on without a second thought. But this little girl, this perfect miracle, she was here. She was real. And she was worth everything. Kiara, Naomi said softly. Her name is Kiara Williams. Not Park. Williams. Her name. Her daughter. It's beautiful, the nurse said. What does it mean? Beam of light, Naomi replied, pressing a kiss to Kiara's forehead. Because something beautiful can come from pain. Naomi left Seoul 2 months after Kiara was born. She booked a one-way ticket to New York and didn't look back. The city welcomed her home with open arms, familiar and comforting after the isolation of Seoul. Her parents helped with Kiara, while Naomi threw herself into work with an intensity that bordered on obsession. She'd always been good with technology, brilliant even. Before marrying Ji-hoon, she'd been climbing the corporate ladder in New York. She'd put her career on hold to move to Seoul with him, to be the supportive wife he needed. That was over now. Now she had someone more important to support. Her daughter. And herself. Working from her tiny Brooklyn apartment with Kiara sleeping in a bassinet beside her, Naomi started coding. She had an idea, a platform that could revolutionize how small businesses managed their operations. Every night after putting Kiara to bed, she worked. Every spare moment she built. When investors said no, she found new investors. When doors closed, she kicked down walls. Her mother would come over and find her at 3 a.m, laptop glowing in the dark. Kiara asleep on her chest. Baby, you need to rest, her mother would say. I'll rest when I'm successful, Naomi would reply. And successful she became. It took 2 years of grinding, pitching, failing, and trying again. 2 years of rejection and doubt, and moments where she wanted to give up. But every time she looked at Kiara, she found the strength to keep going. Her daughter deserved a mother who didn't give up. A mother who showed her that women could build empires, even with broken hearts. Tech Vista launched on Kiara's 2nd birthday. Within 6 months, it had secured major clients. Within a year, Forbes called. Within 18 months, Naomi was on the cover of Business Insider. Tech's rising star, the headline read. The photo showed her in a power suit, Kiara on her hip, both of them smiling. Ji-hoon never saw that magazine. He never knew what she'd become. She made sure of it. She used her maiden name professionally, kept her personal life private, built her empire in New York while he remained in Seoul, completely unaware that the woman he'd discarded had transformed into someone extraordinary. By Kiara's 4th birthday, Naomi was the CEO of a multi-million-dollar tech company. She had a corner office in Manhattan with views of the skyline. She had a penthouse apartment in Tribeca. She had a Tesla, designer clothes, and respect from everyone in her industry. She had everything except the one thing she'd wanted 4 years ago. Him. But she told herself she didn't want him anymore. She'd moved on. That's what she told herself every morning when she looked in the mirror. Every night when she lay alone in her king-sized bed. Every time Kiara asked about her daddy. Mommy, why don't I have a daddy? Kiara asked one morning over breakfast, her 4-year-old face scrunched in confusion. Naomi's heart clenched. She put down her coffee cup and pulled Kiara into her lap. You have me, baby, and I'm enough for both of us, aren't I? Yes. But Emma at school has a mommy and a daddy, and Jake has 2 daddies. Why don't I have any daddies? Sometimes families look different, Naomi said carefully. And that's okay. Our family is you and me, and Grandma and Grandpa. We're perfect just the way we are. Kiara seemed to accept this, going back to her cereal. But the question haunted Naomi for days afterward. She'd never told Kiara about Ji-hoon. What would she say? Your father didn't want us? Your father chose to leave before he even knew you existed? How do you explain abandonment to a child? She'd built a perfect life, a successful life, but there were cracks in the foundation. Cracks she covered with work and ambition and the fierce love she had for her daughter. Cracks that threatened to split open every time she was alone with her thoughts. That's probably why she said yes when Aiden Choi asked her out at a tech conference in Boston. Aiden was handsome, successful, kind. He was the CEO of a competing firm, but instead of seeing her as competition, he saw her as an equal. Their first date turned into a second, the second into a third. Within 6 months, they were in a relationship. Aiden was everything Ji-hoon hadn't been: attentive, present, interested in her thoughts and opinions. He made her laugh. He was good with Kiara, patient and playful in a way that made Naomi's heart soften. On paper, he was perfect. But paper doesn't account for the human heart's stubborn refusal to let go. Naomi never told Aiden the whole truth about Ji-hoon. She said she was divorced, that it hadn't worked out, that her ex wasn't involved in Kiara's life. All technically true, but she never told him about the fact that some part of her, a part she tried to bury deep, still wondered what if. "I love you," Aiden said one night, 6 months into their relationship, as they lay tangled together in her bed. Naomi looked at him, at his kind eyes and genuine smile, and felt nothing but warmth. Not the fire she'd felt with Ji-hoon, not the all-consuming passion that had once defined her existence. Just warmth, comfort, safety. "I love you too," she said, and told herself it was enough. It was a Tuesday morning when everything changed. Naomi was in her office, reviewing contracts, when her COO knocked on the door. "Come in," she called, not looking up from the documents. "We finalized the Park Industries deal," Jennifer said, excitement clear in her voice. "This is huge for us, Naomi. Access to the entire Asian market. Our valuation is going to skyrocket." Naomi's pen froze mid-signature. "Park Industries?" "Yeah, the Seoul-based conglomerate. They've been wanting to expand their tech division, and we're the perfect partner. It's a $50 million deal." "Seoul," Naomi repeated, her mouth suddenly dry. "I know it's far, but the CEO is flying here personally for the signing. That's how important this is to them." Jennifer consulted her tablet. "Meeting is scheduled for Friday at 2. You'll meet directly with their CEO." The room tilted. Naomi gripped the edge of her desk, her knuckles white. "Naomi? You okay?" Jennifer stepped forward, concerned. "I'm fine." Naomi forced her voice to remain steady. "Park is a common name in Korea. What's his full name again?" "Park Ji-hoon. Apparently he took over the company from his father 3 years ago and has been aggressively expanding. He's kind of a big deal in Seoul. Young, brilliant, ruthless in business." Jennifer scrolled through her tablet. "There's not much about his personal life, though. He keeps it very private." Of course he did. Ji-hoon had always been good at compartmentalizing. Work was work. Personal was personal. And apparently, abandoning his wife and unknown child fell firmly into the personal category he never discussed. "The contract needs your final approval," Jennifer continued, oblivious to the fact that Naomi's entire world had just tilted on its axis. "Should I send it through?" Naomi stared at the papers on her desk. 4 years. 4 years of building this company from nothing. 4 years of late nights and sacrifice and clawing her way to the top. And now he was going to walk into her territory, into her boardroom, into the life she'd built without him. She had 2 choices: cancel the deal and let her pride cost her company millions, or sign the contract and face the man who destroyed her. Naomi picked up her pen. Her hand didn't shake. She'd learned how to bury her emotions deep where no one could see them. "Send it through," she said. "And Jennifer, make sure everything is perfect for Friday. I want this meeting to be flawless." "Absolutely," Jennifer beamed. "This is going to change everything for us." If only she knew how right she was. After Jennifer left, Naomi sat alone in her office for a long time. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan stretched out before her, glittering and indifferent to her turmoil. She pulled out her phone and did something she hadn't done in 4 years. She searched his name. Images loaded. Professional photos mostly. Ji-hoon at conferences. Ji-hoon shaking hands with business partners. Ji-hoon on the cover of Asian business magazines. He looked older, more refined. The boyishness she remembered had been replaced by sharp angles and a harder edge. But it was unmistakably him. There were no photos of him with women, no indication of a relationship. The actress from 4 years ago was nowhere to be seen. It didn't matter. Naomi closed the browser and locked her phone. That night, she couldn't sleep. Aiden had texted asking if he could come over, but she'd made an excuse. She needed to be alone, needed to think. At 2 in the morning, she stood at her window, looking out at the city, remembering. She remembered the first time she met Ji-hoon at a tech summit in San Francisco. The way he'd looked at her across the conference room like she was the only person in the world. The way he'd asked her to dinner, then breakfast, then to spend the rest of their lives together. She'd loved him so completely, so entirely, that moving to Seoul hadn't even been a question. Where he went, she went. That's what love meant to her. What a fool she'd been. Mommy? A small voice broke through her thoughts. Naomi turned to find Kiara standing in the doorway clutching her stuffed elephant, her hair wild from sleep. Baby, what are you doing up? Naomi crossed the room and scooped her daughter into her arms. I had a bad dream. Kiara mumbled against her shoulder. Want to tell me about it? I was lost and I couldn't find you. Naomi's throat tightened. I'm right here, sweetheart. I'm always right here. I'm never going to leave you. She carried Kiara to the couch and they curled up together, Kiara's small body warm and trusting against hers. Within minutes, her daughter was asleep again, but Naomi stayed awake, watching the city lights, making a promise to herself. Ji-hoon could walk into her boardroom. He could sit across from her and pretend they were strangers conducting business. But he would never, ever know about Kiara. He'd given up that right 4 years ago when he'd looked her in the eyes and said he didn't love her anymore. Friday arrived too quickly and not quickly enough. Naomi spent an hour getting ready that morning, trying on 3 different suits before settling on a burgundy Armani that screamed power and success. Diamond studs in her ears. Red lipstick that made her look fierce. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Gone was the soft, hopeful girl who'd waited in Seoul. In her place stood someone harder, sharper, untouchable. You look beautiful, Mommy, Kiara said from the bathroom doorway. Naomi turned and smiled, the expression feeling strange on her face. Thank you, baby. Grandma's going to pick you up from school today, okay? Okay. Are you going to an important meeting? Very important. Are you nervous? Out of the mouths of babes, Naomi knelt down to Kiara's level. A little, but sometimes we have to do scary things. Like when I went down the big slide? Exactly like that. Kiara hugged her tight. You can do it, Mommy. You're the bravest person I know. If only that were true. If only Naomi felt brave instead of terrified. But she kissed Kiara's forehead and told herself she could do this. She'd faced worse. She'd survived worse. She could survive seeing Ji-hoon again. The morning dragged. Naomi couldn't focus on anything. She snapped at her assistant twice, something she never did. At noon, she ordered lunch, but couldn't eat it. At 1:30, she redid her lipstick 3 times. At 1:45, Jennifer called. They're here, she said. Early. Should I send them to the conference room? Give me 5 minutes, Naomi said. Offer them coffee, make small talk, I'll be right there. She hung up and stood in her office, breathing deeply. In through the nose, out through the mouth. This was just business, just another meeting, just another deal. The fact that the man on the other side of that table had once been her husband, had once held her while she cried, had once promised to love her forever, that was irrelevant. That was the past. This was business. She walked to the conference room with her head high and her spine straight. Through the glass walls, she could see figures inside. 3 men in suits. She couldn't make out faces yet, but she knew one of them was him. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Jennifer met her outside the door. Ready? Ready, Naomi lied. She pushed open the door and walked in. The three men stood. Two were unfamiliar, probably his executives. But the third, the one in the center, the one whose eyes locked onto hers with an expression of complete and utter shock, that was Ji-hoon. He looked exactly the same and completely different. Same sharp jawline, same dark eyes, same full lips. But there were lines around his eyes now, a hardness to his features that hadn't been there before. He wore his suit like armor, expensive and perfectly tailored. For a moment, they just stared at each other, the air between them crackling with 4 years of history. Naomi moved first. She crossed the room with confident strides and extended her hand. Mr. Park. Naomi Williams, CEO of TechVista, welcome to New York. He stared at her outstretched hand like it might burn him. His lips parted, but no sound came out. She could see the questions racing behind his eyes. The shock, the confusion, the recognition. Up close, she could see the changes more clearly. He looked tired. There were shadows under his eyes. Mr. Park? She prompted, her voice cool and professional. He seemed to snap out of it. His hand engulfed hers, warm and familiar and wrong. Ms. Williams, I didn't know you were the CEO. Why would you? She pulled her hand back and gestured to the table. Shall we begin? I'm sure you're anxious to discuss the partnership. Yes, of course. His voice was rough, strained. He introduced his executives, but Naomi barely registered their names. All her focus was on maintaining her composure, on not letting him see how much his presence affected her. They sat, Naomi at the head of the table, Ji-hoon directly across from her. The meeting began. Jennifer presented the proposal. Charts and graphs filled the screen. Numbers were discussed. Projections analyzed. And through it all, Naomi felt Ji-hoon's eyes on her. She refused to look at him directly, directing all her comments to his executives, treating him like he was just another businessman in a suit. But halfway through Jennifer's presentation, he interrupted. Ms. Williams, may I ask a question? She had no choice but to look at him then. Their eyes met, and she saw everything in that gaze. Shock. Regret. Something that looked almost like pain. She felt nothing. She'd learned how to feel nothing. Of course, Mr. Park. Your company's growth trajectory is impressive. How did you manage such rapid expansion in such a competitive market? Was he seriously asking her about business? Did he really think they could sit here and discuss market strategies like they were strangers? Like he hadn't ripped her heart out 4 years ago? Hard work, she said simply. Dedication. Refusing to give up when people said it was impossible. I had something to prove. The last sentence hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning only they understood. And did you? His voice was quiet. Prove it? I'm sitting in this chair, Mr. Park. I think that speaks for itself. She turned back to Jennifer. Please continue with the presentation. The meeting lasted 2 hours. 2 hours of torture disguised as business. 2 hours of Naomi performing the role of successful CEO, while every cell in her body screamed at the injustice of it. He got to walk back into her life after 4 years. He got to see everything she'd become. And he had no idea what it cost her. What he cost her. Finally, mercifully, it ended. Contracts were signed. Hands were shaken. His executives filed out, discussing logistics. Ji-hoon lingered, clearly wanting to speak to her privately. Naomi didn't give him the chance. Jennifer, please escort our guests out. Mr. Park, my assistant will send the revised contracts by end of business Monday. Have a pleasant stay in New York. She gathered her materials and walked toward the door. Naomi, wait. The sound of her name in his voice, without the formal Ms. Williams, stopped her cold. She turned slowly. That's Ms. Williams, Mr. Park. Her voice was ice. And I believe we've covered everything we needed to discuss. Please, just 5 minutes. We need to talk about... We don't need to talk about anything. She cut him off. This is business. You're a partner now. Nothing more. Whatever history we have is irrelevant. Irrelevant? He stepped closer and she could smell his cologne, the same one he'd worn 4 years ago. It made her stomach twist. Naomi, I had no idea you were in New York. If I had known. What? You would have called? Texted? Checked in? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Don't insult my intelligence. You made your choice 4 years ago. You said you didn't love me anymore. You wanted a divorce? Well, you got it. And I moved on. Did you? The question was soft, searching. Yes. The lie came easily. Completely. You're my past, Ji-hoon, a past I have no interest in revisiting. Now if you'll excuse me, I have actual important meetings to attend. She walked out before he could respond, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. She made it to her office, closed the door, and leaned against it, her heart racing. Her hands shook. She pressed them flat against the wood, forcing herself to breathe. She'd done it. She'd faced him and survived. She'd been strong and cold and professional. He would never know how much seeing him affected her. He would never know about the nights she'd cried herself to sleep. About the year she'd waited. About Kiara. Especially not about Kiara. Naomi pushed away from the door and walked to her desk. She had work to do. She always had work to do. Work was safe. Work was controllable. Work didn't break your heart and leave you bleeding. Her phone buzzed. Aiden. Dinner tonight? I miss you. She should say yes. Should go to dinner with her boyfriend who loved her, who was good to her, who deserved better than a woman who couldn't fully give him her heart. But she couldn't face him tonight. Couldn't pretend everything was normal when her entire world had just been upended. Rain check, crazy day at work. Love you. The lie tasted bitter, but it was easier than the truth. That weekend, Naomi tried to pretend everything was normal. She took Kiara to the park on Saturday, pushing her on the swings, watching her daughter's face light up with joy. Simple moments that usually grounded her felt surreal now, like she was watching her life from outside her body. Higher, Mommy, higher! Kiara squealed. Naomi pushed harder, watching her daughter soar. High enough? Never high enough. If only life worked that way. If only you could just keep going higher, leaving the pain and complications on the ground below. But gravity always pulled you back down eventually. Her phone rang. Aiden. She'd been avoiding his calls all weekend, sending texts instead. Short, cheerful lies about being busy with Kiara. Hey, she answered, still pushing the swing. Hey yourself. I haven't seen you in 3 days. Starting to think you're avoiding me. He said it like a joke, but there was an edge underneath. Aiden was perceptive. One of the things she usually loved about him and currently resented. Not avoiding, just busy. Naomi, talk to me. What's going on? Did something happen at work? Everything happened at work. Her entire past walked through her conference room door and shattered the carefully constructed life she'd built. But she couldn't tell him that. Just a big deal I'm working on. It's stressful. Want me to come over tonight? I'll bring Thai food and we can watch that show you like. You don't have to talk about work. We can just be together. He was so good to her. So patient and kind and understanding. She should want him there. Should want his comfort and support. But the thought of him in her space, asking questions with those concerned eyes, made her want to scream. Not tonight. I'm exhausted. Tomorrow. A pause. Sure, tomorrow. They said goodbye and Naomi hated herself a little bit more. She was pulling away from him and he knew it. She was letting Ji-hoon's return poison the one good relationship she had. It wasn't fair to Aiden, but nothing about this situation was fair. Mommy, I'm hungry, Kiara called from the swing. Okay, baby, let's get ice cream. They walked toward the ice cream cart on the other side of the park. It was a beautiful Sunday afternoon. Families everywhere, couples walking hand in hand, children laughing. the world going on like Naomi's wasn't falling apart. Kiara pulled away suddenly, running toward the cart. "Chocolate! I want chocolate!" "Kiara, wait!" Naomi called, but her daughter was already halfway there, moving faster than her little legs should allow. A man was walking toward the cart from the opposite direction, focused on his phone. He wasn't watching where he was going. Neither was Kiara. They were going to collide. "Kiara!" Naomi started running, but she was too far away. The man looked up at the last second. His hands shot out, catching Kiara before she could crash into him. He steadied her, his large hands gentle on her small shoulders. "Whoa there, little one, you okay?" Naomi reached them, breathless, her hand already reaching for Kiara. "I'm so sorry. She looked up. Time stopped. The park, the people, the noise. Everything faded until there was only him. Ji-hoon, holding her daughter. Their daughter. Looking down at Kiara with a confused expression that was rapidly shifting into something else. Something like recognition. Because Kiara had his eyes, the same dark almond shape, the same long lashes. It was unmistakable once you knew to look for it. And Ji-hoon was looking. "Mommy, I'm sorry," Kiara said, oblivious to the tension crackling in the air. "I just really wanted chocolate." "It's okay, sweetheart." Naomi's voice came from somewhere far away. She couldn't look away from Ji-hoon's face, couldn't miss the moment understanding dawned. "Thank you, mister." Kiara smiled up at him, that bright, innocent smile that could light up a room. "You're welcome." His voice was strangled. His eyes moved from Kiara to Naomi and back again. She could see him doing the math. 4 years. The timing. The resemblance. "What's your name, mister?" Kiara asked with the fearless curiosity of a 4-year-old who'd been taught that most strangers were nice. Ji-hoon opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Naomi with an expression she couldn't read. Devastation, maybe? Or shock? Or something deeper? More complex? Kiara tilted her head, studying him. And then, with the innocent wisdom that only children possess, she asked the question that shattered what was left of Naomi's carefully constructed walls. "Are you my daddy?" The world stopped spinning. Naomi couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stare at her daughter's hopeful face and Ji-hoon's shocked one and know that everything was about to change. Ji-hoon's knees seemed to buckle slightly. His hands still on Kiara's shoulders, he looked at Naomi with an expression of such raw emotion that it physically hurt to witness. His lips moved, but no sound came out. "Baby, let's get your ice cream," Naomi finally managed, her voice barely steady. She reached for Kiara's hand. "But mommy, is he—" "Ice cream. Now." There was an edge to her voice that made Kiara's eyes widen. Naomi never used that tone with her daughter, but she was seconds away from falling apart in the middle of Central Park. She pulled Kiara toward the ice cream cart, not looking back. But she could feel Ji-hoon's eyes on them, could feel the weight of his stare, could feel everything she'd built for 4 years crumbling around her. Behind them, she heard him say her name. Just that. Just her name. Broken and desperate and full of questions she wasn't ready to answer. She didn't turn around. She ordered chocolate ice cream with shaking hands and watched Kiara lick it happily, unaware that she'd just dropped a bomb that would explode all their lives. If you're hooked and want to see what happens next, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss episode 2. Drop a comment below telling me what you think. Should Naomi give Ji-hoon a chance? Does he deserve to know his daughter? And smash that like button if you're Team Naomi all the way. This is just the beginning of their story. And trust me, it only gets more intense from here.